interviewing top sports personalities from around the nation in order to provide you next-level insight and analysis into your Cleveland Browns. Blue Wire Hustle proudly presents All Eyes on Cleveland. And now, here is your host, Brad Ward.
What is happening? It is Thursday, July 8th, 2021. We are in the dog days of summer as we approach Browns training camp, just a couple weeks away. But in the meantime, we're going to entertain you with some more Browns content. Tonight we have a terrific guest with us here on All Eyes on Cleveland to talk it all out. His name is Randy Gurzi. He is the site expert for Dog Pound Daily and a contributor over at NFL Spin Zone. We're going to bring him on here in a minute. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe, plus the notification bell so you know every time we come on the air. It's free content. It's a small price to pay for admission. Just hit that little like button down there, and we appreciate you for a long time for all that is. We have been growing rapidly with our subscribers, almost to 1,300. So let's keep that going there on that front. Mikey, go ahead and kill that music for me, guy. Good man, Mikey, on the ones and twos tonight. And with that, it's time to bring in our guest, Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily. Randy, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Brad. How's it going?
Good. It's excellent to have you back on the show. And I love your T-shirt. Wearing the All Eyes on Cleveland T-shirt.
I appreciate you sending it.
Yes, sir. And it seems to fit well and everything. So how about that?
That's perfect.
All right, awesome. So tonight's our roster rumors, contract talk, and future considerations show with Randy. Randy has written a couple articles over at Dog Pound Daily. If you're not reading Randy's stuff over at Dog Pound Daily, I suggest you do so. It's fantastic. I am always checking in on what he's doing. It's very relevant stuff all the time. And his work at NFL Spin Zone for sure. You can follow him on Twitter at rgurzi81. Anything new you got going on, Randy?
No, it's exactly like you said. It's the dog days of summer where it's just counting down till football starts again, and you can start talking about some actual games hopefully soon. So,
yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into one of your articles here right off the top as we mentioned roster rumors. One that it's not a big surprise. I think that some people with the moves the Browns made probably expected this guy to be on the roster bubble, but there was some news about it here recently, and we're going to get into that here as soon as Mikey can bring up my graphics here for me. And let's see what we got here. Okay. And there it is. All right, here is... Oh, doesn't want to show up for me. There we go. All right, and there's tonight's show with Randy Gurzi, and we want to talk about Mack Wilson, right? So you wrote an article about this, about Mack Wilson, and the potential that... I think it came from Jake Trotter. I'll have the quote here in a minute. Yeah,
it is.
But that he may or may not be cut from the roster. Here's the quote. I'll just read this to get us started. The Browns, why he could get cut, the Browns just spent their second-round pick on JOK, whom they considered taking in the first round before settling on cornerback Greg Newsome II. Owusu-Koramoah plays weak side linebacker, the same position as Wilson, who was drafted in 2019 by the previous front office regime. Whether Owusu-Koramoah eventually starts or not, Wilson can still carve out an important role in the linebacking rotation, but to do that, he'll have to play better than he did last season. That's from ESPN's Jake Trotter on why Mack Wilson could be cut. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? You wrote the article on it. That's what I pulled from the article was that quote there. But your thoughts on Mack Wilson and his chances to make the roster? I mean, from what I could tell, Randy, he looked pretty good at OTA's minicamp.
He did, and I mean, there are a few things to unpack in that quote from Trotter, which was It was really a good read on ESPN where they had several different writers getting on there and, picking a team that they cover or picking one player from the team that they cover that could be cut. And, one thing that Browns fans were not used to right now is there could be good players getting cut just because of the depth, So I don't think Trotter saying this is any kind of, knock on Mack Wilson. I know some people, want it to be, and, some people aren't big fans of his, but, there's a few things in here that, in his quote that are pretty noteworthy. One is just a simple fact of who they've added. I know he mentions JOK, who plays the same position, but then you've also got Tony Fields, who they drafted, I believe it was in the 5th round, who also plays in a similar role. And that's one of the issues that Wilson's going to have. And then, another couple little things in there. One is that he was drafted by a previous regime, so there's not a whole lot of ties there with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. And then lastly is just the fact when he talks about he needs to play better than he did last season. And if we're going to be fair to Mack Wilson, I don't think last year was really an indication of what he can do as a player. I think he was in a great position to start the season, looking like he was going to be the leader of that linebacking core. I know that people had their questions about it, but he had a chance to really kind of step up, be a leader. He was kind of the vocal leader, going into the season, saying, "Hey, don't count us out." And then he had that unfortunate knee injury. Yeah, I think people forget that originally the prognosis was that he might have been lost for the whole season. He was able to fight back, get on the field, but he just never looked like himself. And I think that is something that we also have to remember with him. So if he can play better, I think that's going to come down to his health. And it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to be cut, but it's getting harder for him because the talent around him is getting better. And like I said, he has to prove that he can stay healthy and do it.
Yeah, the regime thing is interesting, because he wasn't drafted. There's not a whole lot of ownership on that. But I think Andrew Berry's been super fair about that, and evaluating talent pretty equally. So, I think he certainly can carve out, to steal Jake Trotter's words there, to carve out a spot in the rotation. Is he going to be what we thought maybe after his rookie year? I don't know. I think I lean more towards a Jacob Phillips with his speed, Owosu Koromoa, and now obviously Anthony Walker is probably their 3 primary guys that we'll be looking at. Maybe Taki on rundowns or early in first downs and stuff like that. But those seem to be the kind of guys that I think that they're leaning more towards, is they want to go fast. Speed is a big issue on this defense, I think.
It is, and I think they also still like Malcolm Smith a lot. I know he's a little on the older side. I believe he's 32 this year, 31, 32, something like that. But I think the staff really liked him. He did a pretty good job for them. He's not going to really be that every down kind of guy, but he can come in and give them some quality snaps as well. So they may not have superstar names at linebacker, but they've got enough guys to get the job done. And, like I said earlier, there's going to be some good players now that are on the chopping block.
Yeah. I like him too, especially when you talk about in coverage. He did some good things for them as far as when they're ahead a little bit, he would step into the game and play coverage better than some other guys. Now, Owosu Koromoa there certainly can probably fill that role a little bit this year. Wilson is an obvious one. While we're on the topic here, any other guys that pop to the top of your mind here when you think bubble roster cut type guys?
Yeah, there's on the offense you could look at Kadero Hodge, who he's I think he's a good player. He's really good on special teams, but you start looking at that wide receiver room, and you got OBJ and Jarvis Landry. Yeah. They're not going anywhere. Rashard Higgins is there. Donovan Peoples-Jones is there. Anthony Schwartz. You start looking, Hodge is starting to look further and further down that depth chart. And then you have to start wondering, what are they going to do with Demetric Felton? Is he going to be a wide receiver? Is he going to be a running back? Is he going to be a hybrid player? I think he'll probably lean more towards running back, but he's also going to be taking on a lot of the special teams roles. So I think somebody like Hodge well, he's not saying he's a bad player, but I could see him being on the roster bubble for sure.
I think I agree with you. I think they like Hodge a lot. I had Dearness Johnson more on the bubble because of Felton. I think Felton could take Dearness Johnson's job, to be honest.
And I think he will. Like I said, it kind of depends where. That's one of those things. But how many receivers are you going to go with? If Stefanski decides to go with 6, then they might keep Hodge. But if they want to only go with 5, and you got to think. I know last year they stuck with 2 wide receiver sets a lot. So if they're not really wanting to do more of that, or not wanting to do more 3 wide receiver sets, it could be even harder for him. But yeah, I do think in the long run, Felton probably will be the running back 3. And the same thing with Dearness Johnson, the things that he could do on special teams as a return man and all, Felton could do that. So, teams like that guy who can be versatile like that. So I think I said not too long ago that it's not very often that a 6th round pick is a lock to make a team, but it kind of feels like he might be.
Yeah, I mean, he's special. I think he's special. I think he was a steal.
I do too.
He brings a whole nother kind of weapon that the Browns just don't even really have on the roster. I think he could be really explosive. And when you talk about Dearness Johnson, he's done a great job, and he's a fan favorite, but, they don't need another guy that can run between the tackles, right? They need somebody that can do the other stuff, and that's really what Felton brings to the table, at least as far as I'm concerned. You watch some of his college highlights, and he's just amazing with the ball in his hand sometimes. So,
but I love him as a receiver out of the backfield. I think that could just be
absolutely
a great weapon for them. But again, he did well in the slot also. So that's something that I can see them throwing him out there. Again, it's just that versatility. That's what I like so much about him.
Absolutely. Special teams too. I think he can get in on the return game a little if they need him to. I've never been a big fan of this guy, and I think he's not long for the roster. Let's see what you think. Sheldrick Redwine, I think was kind of. I've never been high on him. I think Richie LeCount takes his job. Thoughts on that?
I think you're right. I think LeCount's a good player. He's another one that was kind of a steal. I think he had an injury in the offseason, which I think turned a lot of teams off to him. But as long as he's healthy, I think he could be a better player. Redwine, he could make some plays. I know he has a few key interceptions here and there, but he also didn't really seem like a guy that the coaching staff trusted. It was almost like everybody had to be hurt for him to get onto the field.
Yeah, he always seemed to kind of play very, reactionary, never anticipatory.
Yep.
Very, sometimes he ended up in the right spot at the right times. I just never thought he was aggressive enough coming up to play the run. He was always very timid. I don't know. That was my impression of him.
Yeah, I believe if I'm not mistaken, I believe he is under 200 pounds.
Yeah.
I definitely saw that same thing in the run game where he didn't contribute a whole lot in that area. But yeah, like I said, he did make a couple key plays here and there when he was given an opportunity, but clearly he's not consistent enough. I agree with you. I could see him being on the bubble for sure.
When you look at the cornerback room and you look past the obvious guys, MJ Stewart, AJ Green, Robert Jackson, Brian Allen, who are the odd guys out? Who do you think they keep out of that group?
I think out of that group, probably AJ Green has a good shot of making the team. I know, he was that guy that they paid a lot. This offseason they paid for Marvin Wilson as a undrafted free agent, but last year was AJ Green. Obviously, there was something that they liked in him. I think it comes down to him and Stewart for that final spot. I think the top 4 spots are really set with Denzel Ward, Newsome, Greedy Williams, and Troy Hill. And I think they'll go 5. They could surprise us. You never know. But if they go 5, I think AJ Green probably has a shot there. MJ Stewart kind of reminds me of Redwine a bit, and he made a couple big plays here and there. He had the interception in the playoffs, but it was more of a, hey, we were injured, had to throw someone out there. I don't think that he really was consistent enough.
Me neither.
He's a little bit. He's also a little bit better in the slot, and now with Troy Hill there's really not a need for a slot guy. That's Hill's got that locked down for him.
Yeah,
by the way, Hill, I still think is one of the most underrated moves they made this offseason. Like it's not, they've done so well that, we've kind of glossed over the fact that they added him, but he's fantastic.
We don't gloss over it here on All Eyes on Cleveland.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a little here's his little shout out to the show for you.
Sir, All Eyes on Cleveland. We here, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one. He was pumped, man. He's excited to be here.
Yeah, we're big Troy Hill fans here. So Robert Jackson kind of impressed me when he was thrown into action. I just worry because he can't slide inside. He doesn't provide any versatility that way. That's my question about A.J. Green, too, is he can't really slide inside either. And it's like, if you need to provide any depth behind Troy Hill, should he get dinged, should he get banged up? I think one of the promising things that we saw from OTAs and minicamp was that they were trying to use Newsome in there. So if you did have to go depth inside, for some reason Troy Hill missed a game or something, that maybe you could slide Newsome in there. I think they seemed to like what he was able to do in there, even though he didn't really profile there as a draft pick. They're at least trying him out in there.
Yeah, and I think he's got the talent to do it. And if they don't feel like he can, I could see that being a swing factor for MJ Stewart. The thing with Jackson and Green both is they have practice squad eligibility. I don't believe Stewart does anymore. So you could even see them saying, let's stick with Stewart and try to see if we can get one of these guys on the practice squad. Just because Stewart, I'm looking it up. This will be his fourth season, so he won't be able to be on the practice squad. So that is another option, and I think it all comes down to how do they feel behind Troy Hill. He's been pretty versatile in his career, but I don't know if you really want to. I'm not versatile, durable in his career, but I don't know that you really want to roll the dice on that.
Yeah, you just don't want to end up with Tavierre Thomas or MJ Stewart. I said again, having to play a ton of downs in the nickel if he were to get hurt, and I just would like to try to avoid that. I was hoping for some depth there, so I'm hoping Newsome can fill that role should they need to slide him inside at some point, right?
Yep.
As far as surprise guys that I think there is to watch for, there's one name that kind of comes up for me that I think may be in a little more trouble than people realize, and you can react to this however you want. But Jordan Elliott, I don't think he had a very good year last year. His tape, his college tape is fantastic, but his tape last year is underwhelming. And I heard some murmurs out of minicamp that he didn't come in and look very good, or just kind of some negative comments about him. I know that he's probably too talented to put on that bubble, but they got so many guys in that room right now with a lot of talent, it makes you wonder.
I think if anything, they've definitely put him on notice. Picking Togia in the fourth, adding Marvin Wilson. Not that they all play the exact same, technique on the defensive line, but just some of the names that they added. Malik McDowell. That's something I'm really interested in seeing how he does, because that's, as far as athleticism goes, he might be, second to Myles Garrett. He's that much of a freakish athlete, but Bill's never played an NFL down. Last time he played a collegiate down was 2016, so he's a real wild card, but I want to see him on the field. Yeah. But I do think you're right that Elliott's probably too talented to even be considering being cut right now, but like I said, they pretty much put him and anybody on that line really on notice that, hey, we're willing to throw anybody out there, whoever's going to play, and they're going to definitely, that competition can bring out the best in them, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so for sure. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland with special guest Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. Follow him on Twitter at rgurzi81. Let's talk contracts for a minute here. Baker Mayfield's extension, he kind of has said all the right things. His agent came out and said that, hey, we kind of know the parameters here of where we think that, as far as the market goes, where we think we're going to fall. We would like to get it done sooner than later. Thoughts on if you think it gets done before this season, if you think it gets done next year? I kind of tend to think Lamar Jackson's contract has a little more momentum at this point, and I think that Allen and Mayfield's agent may kind of be like, okay, go ahead first, because that benefits them in the long run, I think. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if Jackson signs, it could kind of speed things up a little bit. It gives them those parameters. Honestly, if I'm Baker's camp, I'm waiting.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
For the Browns side, it seems like they want to do a little bit of a wait and see approach as well. But if I'm the Browns side, I'm saying, hey, let's sign him now, because contracts for quarterbacks only increase. I mean, I've pointed to it several times, but the Dak Prescott situation is like the perfect example. In 2018, he was getting close to, I think that was the first year he could renegotiate. He had one more year on his contract, and the talk at the time was $28 million. And I remember people laughing at that, like, oh, he's not going to earn $28 million. Then all of a sudden Jared Goff signs and Carson Wentz signs, and they're getting in the 30s. And then Prescott goes into 2019 with them talking about $30 million. And then now fast forward to this offseason, he just signed for $40 million. So you see in just a couple of years how much that one jumped up. And then you can also look at Jimmy Garoppolo, look at Derek Carr. When they signed their contracts, people were, almost laughing at how much they got, because it just seemed like asinine amounts. Now you look at them and $25 million, that's chump change for a quarterback. So I think for a team, it's better to do it sooner. Just if you know that's your guy, you believe in your guy, bite the bullet, do it. And before long, it's going to be a bargain. But for the players, as hard as it might be, holding out, waiting is the way to go. Yeah, so you see it right there,
Yeah, I feel like the Prescott deal kind of set the market at $40 million, and it's almost not about, like, I hear a lot of people compare, like, well, he's not as good as Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, so he shouldn't get that much. I don't think that matters. I think the timing matters more than anything, Randy.
Exactly.
I think that he's probably going to get above 35 no matter what if he did it this year. I think if he waits till next offseason, he'll get 40. I do.
I do too. I mean, look at right there. You've got Jared Goff at number 5. I mean, how many quarterbacks in the NFL are better than Jared Goff? I mean, the guy they traded him for is better than him, But Matthew Stafford signed a contract before Goff did. So, like you said, the rate goes up. It always goes higher, and it doesn't really matter who's better. Are you a starting quarterback, and is it your turn to get paid? And when it's your turn, I think Baker's going to get above 40. And we'll probably see that with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson will probably get above 40, and Josh Allen will probably get above 40. And that's just going to be the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I think they're all going to get right around there and a little bit above. I think the first one it goes maybe gets a little bit less, but
Exactly, yeah.
That'll just kind of see how things go. And that's why I think that Baker's camp should be okay to wait. And I think that the Browns are kind of the same thought that, like, hey, we'll pay an extra $5 million a year to just see a couple more data points. Let's see him put a full 16 games together that we really love, even though I think it's inevitable that he gets signed. I don't think there's any question about that. But I just think that I don't think they're against seeing more football from him. I have an interesting question that I've asked a couple people. Do you think it serves him better to mentally, right? So, like, from a mental aspect of Baker Mayfield, does it serve him better to go into this huge season, right, with all these expectations, with him being signed and paid, like, all right, I'm the man, this is my team, I've already got that? Or is he already that so much that it doesn't matter whether it's done before or after?
To me, first thing I'm going to say is that, like you had just said, I'm going to touch on a quick point that you just made and then jump into that question. When you talked about if the Browns wait and have to pay him an extra $5 million a year, I'm telling you, that is one of the best things to hear, is to know that the Browns actually have a quarterback. We're talking about, hey, we might need to pay him a whole bunch more. That's great. You've got a quarterback, and if you go into the season and go, man, our quarterback did so good, we got to pay him $45 million. That's a wonderful problem to have. So I'm totally okay with that. And as far as your question about the contract and all of that, the way Baker's wired, there's a part of me that wonders if it might be better for him to go into the season without, a contract beyond next year, because he's the kind of guy that's going to go out there and say, okay, if they don't believe in me, I'm going to go show them just how good I can be. And And that's not to say that if he had the security that he wouldn't, use that as motivation. But he's one of those guys that as soon as he feels like he's being doubted in the slightest, that's when he's at his best. So I could definitely see a situation where him not getting an extension before the season leads to even better play.
Yeah, I agree. Let's transition to Nick Chubb here. I just did a deep dive article on this where I kind of looked at every single contract from Zeke all the way up till the latest contracts with Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry. The market has kind of come back down to earth here because of the pandemic and the cap crunch and the franchise tag. And the Browns kind of have a lot of leverage here because if you look at Henry's deal, where it's if you take away all the fluff, right, it's 2 years for 25 guaranteed, right? And that's kind of, I think, what the model should be for Chubb, because if they wanted to play hardball and go transition tag or franchise tag, it's really just an extra year of that guaranteed, and then you have an out clean, and if he continues to perform, you have him for even more time at an elite, paying him like an elite running back $12 million a year or so, but not overpaying him, right? And you have an out after 2023 should he decline. I kind of think that they wait till the end of this year, make sure everything looks good health-wise and everything, and then sign him to that deal. That's what I would recommend. That feels right to me. Where do you come out on Chubb?
I think you're absolutely right. I got one of the writers on our site. He's not on. He used to be on the site. Sorry, he's on NFL Spin Zone now. Corey Kinnan. One of his pinned tweets is "Friends don't let friends pay running backs," which I always think of that with running backs. And
I've seen him post that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always been right there with them that you don't pay a running back. It doesn't work, and everybody pays their guy, and it's like, no, I think he'll be different, and then. It's very rare that it's different. Devontae Freeman, Todd Gurley, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott, they all start to get beat up, and the production declines as soon as they pay. And it seems I can't remember the last one to finish out his contract. Adrian Peterson did the best, but he still didn't even finish out his contract.
Yeah.
So it's hard to sit here and say, yeah, so they pay the running back. It's hard to say that with a running back that's already had knee issues. But it's even harder to talk about not paying Nick Chubb because he's just so good. He's so transcendent. He's really the biggest cog in that offensive wheel. So I think I'd be right there with you that if you are going to pay him, you need to do something. And Andrew Berry's a smart guy, so he's probably already thinking that too. Do something that is a shorter term, pay him a good chunk of money, but don't get locked into a contract, for 5 years. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, I think, had like a 6-year extension, which is just – it was crazy. To give a running back that kind of length in his contract. So
the craziest thing about Zeke's deal, and when I did this article that I didn't realize, is they did the extension so far in advance. This is actually the first year of his actual extension in 2021. So I mean, how crazy is that, right? Now a lot of those are fluff, right? So like Chubb's deal may look like 4 years, $50-some million, but in reality, if you look at the guaranteed money, it's probably going to be like 2 years, 25, 26 million, I think.
Yeah, and I'd be completely happy with that. And another reason that getting Chubb, a couple more years might work out better for the Browns than other teams. And now I sound like the people I just talked about saying it'll work for our guy. But the one thing that they have going for them is the fact that you still have Kareem Hunt for the next couple of years as well.
Exactly.
So you don't have to sit there and give Chubb the ball 25 times a game and run him into the ground the way that Todd Gurley got run into the ground and Devontae Freeman, Zeke and all of them. You can split the load and keep him from getting completely beat up like that. So I think that will help him and the team in the long run.
Yeah, you know what, Randy? It's so funny. Friends don't let friends pay running backs. It's funny, but like I can't think of one instance where the team hasn't paid their guy. Like,
yeah, what's funny? There's one, and it was the team that did it then turned right around and paid their next guy. If you remember, DeMarco Murray led the NFL in rushing in 2014.
Yeah.
Dallas said no, we're not going to pay the running back. He goes and gets this huge contract with Philadelphia, completely stinks it up. I think he only had 700 yards that next year. Philly gets rid of him after 1 year. And then Dallas turned right around and paid Ezekiel Elliott, and he runs 900-something yards last year. And then, as you said, now he's going into the actual extension. So the one team that seemed to figure it out then turned right around and did it anyway. So
yeah, it's crazy. Everybody says that don't pay running backs, but everybody eventually does, and that's kind of the crazy thing. I think the Titans. I just think following that model seems to make a lot of sense. So, they actually franchise tagged him first, right? Yeah. To, say, hey, here's what you can make for 1 year, no security. And then we're going to offer you this deal that's really you're going to get your life-changing money. You're going to get your signing bonus for $13-14 million. And then we're going to guarantee your second year for $10 million. It ends up being 2 for $25, which is really just the franchise tag times 2, right? And that seems to make a lot of sense. And that's where the Browns have leverage here. Is they don't have to do anything now. They can wait, make sure he's healthy before you sign him to that deal, but guaranteeing Nick Chubb for 2 more years, and then having, $12 million a year after that if they want to continue on that deal or restructure it, however they want to handle it. It seems like the ideal way to go for me.
I agree 100%.
Where do you come out on Denzel Ward? What do you need to see from him this year? What do you expect him to ask for?
Denzel Ward, the biggest thing that you need to see from him is just that he can play, a full season. He's missed 11 games in 3 years. So he's great. I mean, he's definitely up there, as far as one of the legit number 1 corners in the NFL. He can cover any receiver. But you've got to see him play an entire season. And I think Cleveland is probably going to be a little hesitant to pay him. I know they picked up his 5th-year contract, so I think they're probably going to – I could see him being the guy that they make play next year as well before they really start getting into contract extension. Now, if he comes in this year and plays 17 games and stays healthy, they may look at an extension in the offseason. But – if he has another season where he misses 3-4 games or whatever, I could see them saying, all right, we'll let him play his 5th year and then see.
Yeah. I'm almost okay with, if he played 14 games this year, I would be happy. I don't need to see him play all 17. I understand he's going to get dinged here and there. I just want to see him play 14 games and play consistently at that high level. And I think I would be okay with that. Now, I'm concerned that he's going to ask for, top. I mean, if we look at cornerback market is kind of all over the place.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, Ramsey at $21 million, Marlon Humphrey at $20 million, 19.5 there. You guys can't see that. Sorry. Duh. There it is. He probably lands somewhere in the middle there. Because it's such a premier position, I'm worried he's going to ask for $20 million a year when he's probably worth really somewhere between 15 and 17.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that too. I think if they can get him somewhere in 17 range, I think that's, especially if you start talking about if they don't do the extension until next year, that's probably fine. Yeah. But again, the whole cornerback room right now, outside of Troy Hill, it's you just every time they go to the ground, you have to hold your breath a little bit. We got, I think, of course, Greedy Williams has missed already 20 games in his career. If you counting last season, missing the whole season. Then you have Greg Newsome, who I believe he played 17 games in college and missed 14 games in college.
Yeah,
I don't know if those numbers are exactly right, but I know it's something like that. And so it's just it's scary how many injuries they have in there. And I really like Greg Newsome as a player. When they drafted him, I was like, oh man, this is kind of hopefully this isn't too many guys that missed time. So.
I'm right there with you. I love the draft pick. I feel like it adds the depth they need there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But with those 3 guys though, they should at least be able to have 2 of them healthy pretty much week in, week out, unless I don't know, it gets really rough. But Denzel Ward, I think, is special, so I think you want to try to pay him if he can show that he can stay healthy, because it's really hard to find a guy like him in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think that, 14 games or so, I don't think his injury problems have been incredibly detrimental. And last year, I think he missed one or two of those games because of COVID, so that's not even really an injury issue. I'm fine if he misses a game here and there. I think they just want to make sure that you're not talking about missing him for a quarter of the season every year.
I agree. Well said. Looking at Wyatt Teller, because he's next up here on our list. If you look at right guard contracts, Brandon Sheriff just signed a monster deal.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with these guys?
I like Wyatt Teller a lot.
Me too.
I believe PFF had him they got him number 1, I believe.
Yeah.
I know he was number 1. The problem is he started 11 games last year. He missed 5. It's just such a small sample size that I'm not ready to give him that kind of contract. Now, if he goes out next year and he does the exact same thing, then you start talking about some of those, like the Zach Martin type deals where you do start talking about the $80 million, I think it was $80 million for 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I think he, has another season like that. Absolutely. You start talking about giving him that kind of money. And plus you're going to have players like Batonio and J.C. Treader who start nearing the end of their contracts. And it makes it a little bit easier to give Teller this big chunk of change. So,
yeah, I agree. So here's kind of where I stand with that is he's 26 years old. If he repeat performance what he did last year, I think you pay him what you need to because he's a stud. He's probably one of the best linemen in the league. And he's 26. And then you look down your line, and you have Batonio and Treader, as you said, who are approaching 30 and have no more dead money on their deals. Mm-hmm. So preferably Treader, because I don't like having the NFLPA president on our roster, to be honest. to be perfectly honest, it's just a headache, I think, a little bit. But, not that he's been a warrior for the Browns. Don't get me wrong. He's played hurt. He's a tremendous player. But, they have Nick Harris in the wings that they may think can fill that role. And even if you look at Batonio, if they decided to move on from him and they spent the money on Treader, I think it's one or the other probably. I think if you spend the money on Teller, you're going to have to let one of those guys go probably. But, to keep that offensive line together where the way it is now is pretty, like this year's special to be able to keep that line together. It's probably not going to last forever, but you've got guys behind them that I think can especially with our offensive line coach and kind of the culture created there. I think you can fill in behind him. I'm high on James Hudson. I'm high on some other guys in that room. So, I
agree with you 100%. And I was on the that Nothing Rhymes with Orange podcast not too long ago, and they were playing a little predictive who's going to be on the roster in 2022. And they asked me about Treader, and I said I didn't think he'd be there. And their first question is that because he's the NFLPA president? And I said no, I really don't think so. I think it's the Nick Harris thing. I think it's the fact that they're going to have to pay Wyatt Teller, and you have a guy that you drafted last year to play center that could slide in there and be making a fraction of what Treader's making. He's also already started to have. He doesn't miss a lot of games, but he's been getting banged up and having to fight through a lot of injuries. And eventually, especially on the wrong side of 30, that starts to catch up.
Now, two guys, after I think we agree pretty much so far on all those things. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland with special guest Randy Gurzi. We're in the contract talk portion of the show right now. These are two guys here that I haven't really dug into because I didn't really think about them that much. Those were the main four for me so far. But I guess you can start talking about David Njoku's future. Where do you come out on him?
If I had my way, David Njoku would get an extension and stay with the team. But it doesn't seem like the staff is as high on him. Obviously, if they went and paid Austin Hooper all that money and then drafted Harrison Bryant, I think personally I see Njoku as the best tight end on that roster. And it's like he was the one making the circus catches when nobody else was doing anything. But he continued to be number 3 in the pecking order. So. I don't think he's going to be there beyond this year, which, in my opinion, is a shame because I really do like him a lot.
I think it's a shame too. I hope that changes this year. I think that can change a little this year because we've seen him go from, hey, I want out of Cleveland, to, all right, I'm cool here. Let's, I'm happy with my role. Let's play this out. We've kind of seen his attitude change. Maybe with that, his standing with the coaching staff changes a little. And I think that in an effort that, we know Stefanski is always going to be looking to get that edge offensively, in an effort to really push the ball down the field this year, which is something that they didn't do as much last year. I think one of those weapons you can use is David Njoku down the seam.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope you're right. I hope that he does get on the field more because, like you said, he's a complete mismatch. Linebackers can't keep up with him. He's too big for the safeties. So I think it's it would be excellent to get him on the field more. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd be fine being wrong on this one.
Yeah, he's a specimen. I hope he shows out this year for sure. A guy that a couple articles have come out about. The coaching staff was raving about him a little bit at minicamp. Ronnie Harrison, who we were already high on, but they said Manny came to minicamp and he even looked like a totally different player, a better player even than what they expected last year. What do you do with Ronnie Harrison?
Yeah, Joe Woods was talking about how when they got him last year, it was like, hey, let's just teach him, what we can and get him out on the field. Whereas this year they're talking about moving around more and getting him into positions where he can be better utilized. I think that, that they've talked about wanting to do the 4-2-5 defense more. Woods just talked about wanting to be nickel and dime more often, which getting more defensive backs out there. And I think Harrison's the kind of guy that can play almost like that old school kind of strong safety role, but it'll be, the strong safety kind of linebacker hybrid in his system. I think he can play closer to the line of scrimmage, covering the tight ends, things like that, and just be. Yeah. I mean, we saw him last year, a playmaker. He only had the one interception in which he ran back for a touchdown, but he easily could have had 3 or 4. Like he seemed like every week he got both hands on the ball and just didn't haul it in. But I think this year, being a little more comfortable on the defense, he's probably going to start making those plays.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to hear all that positive stuff about him. Plus, he's aggressive. He's a playmaker. He's long. He's athletic. He can run with those tight ends. I totally agree that he kind of fits that rover role. If you're going to do the play of the dime with the three safeties on the field. That brings me to, something that we were going to talk about anyways. If you take the Browns 3 safeties, which if Delpit comes healthy, and right now so far so good, right? If he comes back healthy and you've got John Johnson, who's a fantastic player, and you've got Ronnie Harrison, and they deploy that 3 safety, where ideally do you put each guy, do you think, Randy?
I think, Harrison's going to stay where we talked about, kind of like that hybrid type role. Johnson and Delpit are both going to probably play more of the deeper roles, with Delpit leaning more towards, the strong safety. Strong safety and free safety have kind of become a little more interchangeable in today's
Very
NFL.
much so, yeah.
But if you're going to have to label it, I think, Johnson's probably a little bit better in the kind of deep field coverage. So I think he would have more of that responsibility than Delpit would. But I definitely think that the two of them are going to kind of be the deeper safeties, and Harrison and JOK are probably going to have pretty similar roles for kind of being those hybrid players.
Interesting. Yeah, I just am kind of the thought, like, I think I want JOK to play more just linebacker than, get caught up in that interchangeableness. I know he's very versatile, but I just really like to see him to be like their almost every down will, right? And yeah, I know that lends itself to being a little on the light side when you really go dime, and you're going to have a Ronnie Harrison, a Walker, or a Jacob Phillips, a Walker, and a Koromoa on the field. You're a little light, but damn, you're fast, Yeah,
I could see it being more of, you got the 3 safeties with Delpit, Harrison, and Johnson, and then having Koromoa out there with, Walker or Phillips or, whoever they decide to have in that kind of nickel situation. I think he'll be a hybrid player, but I think more of a linebacker,
Yes.
definitely in that spot. But, it's one thing that it's driven me nuts for years is just watching, tight ends just carve the defense apart.
Yeah.
And so to have JOK and have Ronnie Harrison that could kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage and cover tight ends, I think that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. I think that, we saw so much of Joe Woods bring that cover 3 Seattle press bail over and run a lot of that. I think they probably get away from that more this year. A lot more of the 2 deep stuff, cover 2, cover 4, 2 deep, whatever, with maybe that third safety on the field, especially on pass downs and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to see what he does with that defense. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland. Special guest Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. He's killing it here tonight on All Eyes on Cleveland. He's rocking the All Eyes on Cleveland t-shirt, which we salute for sure. Let's dive into something that just came up yesterday. I grabbed it off of Twitter here. Let me throw it up on the screen. I thought this was interesting and worth talking about. Nick Carnes posted, Jarvis Landry said this offseason he cut his playing weight from 213 pounds to 197 pounds. Quote, when I was bigger, I did feel stronger, but at the same time, I ain't been 197 since year 2 when I was really shaking guys. 2015 was the best year Jarvis had as a Dolphin. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I know he's probably trying to get a little quicker. There's been a lot of criticism about the offense last year not being able to get downfield. The thing with Jarvis is, I don't even know that that's really his role. Jarvis
That's not his game, yeah.
Yeah, he's better in the slot, trying to win with his quickness. If anything, I could see him dropping some weight, being a positive in the fact that he doesn't miss games. And the only game he's ever missed in his entire career was COVID related. So, he doesn't miss games, but he did start getting a little banged up last year. So, maybe getting just, a little healthier and that kind of stuff, and of course, if you ever looked at him, it's not like the guy was unhealthy, but maybe he's just dropping a little weight and won't, be a little lighter on the knees, the legs, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's a huge deal. Because I'm not going to, even when he came out of college, I think he ran like a 4.6. So I don't think he's going to go out there, burning past defensive backs.
It's interesting, these pictures here I grabbed from 2015. I can't tell a huge difference when in looking at him. You see him here, he's got just a t-shirt on. I guess there he looks a little thinner now than he does, and if you look at his arms is where the big difference is, because you look at how strong he is now. This is last year. But I have no complaints in the way that he played last year. Like he played like an absolute beast, and I of course he could get some more separation, but I don't think Jarvis Landry is any of the Browns' problems at all. I feel like he has been everything that they need, and so if he feels like he'll be better at age 28, I believe he just turned 28. So if he feels like going back down 13 or 15 pounds at age 28, then that's fine. I don't think it's going to affect his game that much. Maybe he does, as he said, shake some more people or feel a little bit better at that weight. And I understand that. Yeah,
for sure. And if he does go out there and start shaking people, I'm totally fine with that too.
For sure.
Go out there and get past them all. That's great.
Yeah, he's just not. I mean, he's not going to be the guy that's going to stretch the field. Probably, he's going to be the guy that they're hitting underneath, right? And in the patterns that he's succeeded in, intermediate routes and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think some people have taken. I get accused of being a Jarvis hater because I'll mention the fact that that in the Kansas City game he just had the 7 catches for 20 yards, and I don't really think of the times when he gets taken away like that are necessarily all on him. The Browns just didn't have anybody that can stretch the field. It's hard to go out there and put him as a wide receiver 1 when he can't that's not his game. His game is not to get deep and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean that he's not somebody that can be valuable. I think Andrew Berry understands that as well, which is why that they're still going to try with Odell Beckham Jr. and why they drafted Anthony Schwartz. They want that guy that can stretch the field. And if you have a receiver that can get deep, stretch the field, and allow Landry to work underneath, that's a perfect role for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like he's been ideal in the role that they've asked him to play. And, for me, he's the heart and soul of the team. So I'll never say a bad word about Jarvis. I think he started this whole thing even before Stefanski got here, the turnaround of the Browns. So,
he's been excellent on and off the field. I love the work that his foundation does. And, I think the only time I ever have any complaints is when they try to use him in a role that's not ideal for him. That's all that is.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right as far as, his work ethic, his willingness to push through the pain, all of that, it's a great example.
Randy, one question that I've been trying to ask a lot of people and kind of digging into here a little bit is, last year we saw Stefanski bring over the Kubiak offense and deploy that, and they didn't really have much time to do much else. You saw as the year went on, they added wrinkles and parts and pieces, and he was fantastic as a play caller and all of that stuff. How do you think with this off season and the addition of some weapons and some and they really have, if you're going to go up against the Browns as a defense, it's really pick your poison, right? Like, they can go out on Sunday and they're going to be like, oh, we're going to take away the run. Okay, fine, do that. We're going to beat you in the pass game. Okay, we're going to take away the pass. We're going to chunk you in the run game. They can beat you a number of ways. I just see Stefanski as a guy that's always going to be at the forefront of offensive trends in the NFL. That's just kind of the guy he is, in my opinion. What do you see this offense change? How do you see this offense changing, and what are some ways that you see it change? I'll bring up a graphic here that's kind of interesting, but yeah, go ahead and tell me your thoughts on that.
I think that having the off-season work is going to be huge. One thing people keep saying that I don't agree 100% with is that they got better when Odell Beckham Jr. went down. I don't think that they got better. Well, obviously they got better after he went down, but I don't think it had anything to do with one another. I think that the offense just started to click. They didn't have the offseason. They didn't have preseason. All these guys are in there, and a new Baker is with him, his fourth head coach in his third season, So I think that it took a little bit longer for the light bulb to really come on, and it just unfortunately happened right after Odell Beckham got the ACL tear. So now I think you're going to see a lot of what we were seeing near the end of last season, but you're going to see it with a couple guys who are a little more explosive, like Odell Beckham, Anthony Schwartz. Obviously, I don't think Schwartz is going to be out there, 20 snaps a game, but you might get a handful of snaps with him out there just to try to keep the defense honest. And you probably might even see him in that kind of role that they were trying to use JoJo Natson in, where they kept bringing him in on the, fake the receiver reverse and occasionally give it to him on the jet sweep and all. But I do think we're going to see, I see you got this graphic here. I've heard whispers that they want to use more 11 personnel, getting 3 wide receivers out there.
Yes.
And I think that would be the group they have now. That would be fantastic to do. And you could switch it up a lot. You don't have to just stick with OBJ, Landry, and Higgins. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones, who averaged over 20 yards a catch last season. You got the rookie Schwartz. So you could mix it up and get that deep field attack, which Stefanski had in 2019 when, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs were just carving up defenses.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think, when somebody asked me, I had this up once, and they were like, do you think that they need to, I did an AMA, Ask Me Anything, and somebody was like, do you think they need to play more 11 personnel to stretch the field? I don't necessarily think they do. I think that he's creative enough to stretch the field from 12 personnel, 21, 22 personnel. I don't think it matters, right? Right. We've seen them. I think that I'm really high on Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think he can really fill I think he can be a legit wide receiver too in the NFL, and I think he could really emerge after this year even when there is going to be some changes in that room, inevitably. You know, and I see him stepping up in that role big time. I think him and Higgins could even maybe split time a little bit this year, that wide receiver 3 position, probably more than, you know, just one guy taking the role, because I think he's very explosive. He can stretch the field, and I just see him being kind of the future a little bit of that wide receiver room. It maybe not at a number 1 role, but at a 2 role or a 3 role even, just for years to come, right? His body, he's really, you know, the rumors this offseason, he's really developed his body into an NFL-type body. He looks explosive. All the word out of training camp was that he looked really, really good. Even Baker commenting on that. So I feel really good about Peoples-Jones. Obviously Higgins, Odell. I'm somebody that's I disagree a little bit about the Odell thing with you, Randy. I don't think that they got worse when he went away. I think that it's more complicated than that. There's like layers to it. But I think that he affected Baker. You know, I think that painting that as, that was just the progression of the offense getting better, and it just so happened that it was when Odell was gone, is a little bit glossing over an issue that maybe existed when it was there, that Baker pressed a little bit when Odell was on the field. Like, if he didn't get a couple touches for a couple series, I'm pressing it home. I'm feeling like, dang, get him the ball. I mean, I'm sure Baker feels that, right? I mean, I think that's a real component that he has to get over. And I think maybe playing without him last year enabled him to do that. I hope so. I really hope so that when he comes back, it's more of Odell saw them win without him. Okay, I'll play whatever role I have to play. And Baker had success without him. Okay, I'll throw the ball to who's ever open, not make sure that we get Odell the ball. Let's force it in there. You know what I mean? Which I think I saw a little bit of, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and you know what? And you're probably right. I mean, I don't mean to just completely gloss over it, but I think there is. It probably is like multi-layered like that. One thing that I had pointed out, I had said, talking about it, you know, going forward, is the biggest thing now is Odell Beckham can be a huge weapon in this offense, but he needs to come and play and be a part of the offense, not be the offense.
Yes.
And so maybe, if Baker was trying to be like, oh, I got to force it to Odell, of course that's probably going to cause an issue. But perhaps what you just said, that might be a perfect way of saying it. Like, if he saw how things were going without him and he can come in and kind of be that missing piece last year, that they were missing last year, that could be huge. Like, if you go back and watch some of the film, the week against Baltimore, week 1, he was beating his guy like a drum.
Yes.
And they weren't getting him the ball. So it could be, like you said, it could be a multi-layered thing where him and Baker just were never on the same page. And, you know, it could just be wishful thinking on my part, but I'm saying, that was just because it hadn't clicked yet. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to interpret it. A lot of people have said what you said, and I just think that there is some level, not completely, but there's some level of, and I'm not putting it on Odell at all. I think it was on Baker a little bit. But I think that he may have grown past that. My hope is that he grew past that and he can identify him now more as part of the offense and not the focal point that I need to get the ball to Odell. We need to show that we are a connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because if you take that offense the way it was clicking and running last year and you throw a guy out there that can score an 80-yard touchdown in the blink of an eye.
It could be unstoppable, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, it probably a lot of wishful thinking on my part, but I really would love to just see it come forward. I've had some people ask me before if they should have moved on from Odell this offseason. I was like, absolutely not. It's not.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's
not time to do that. I think you give him another full year in Stefanski's system and see what can happen. And especially now that you've seen Baker really grow. I know he was really good as a rookie, but what he did last year from, week 7 on, he had a couple weeks in there, which were a little rough, but I think those were the ones where he was playing in the really bad weather. But what he did near the end of the season, he was playing as good as any quarterback in the NFL. So I want to see what he's like with an elite receiver now playing like this.
I agree, no question, and that's that's my hope, right? Is that he steps in and they don't miss a beat, and it all comes together perfectly, and that's the hope, right? I think it's very possible that's it. A couple other things I throw at you here that I'm kind of been digging into offensively wise. I think with the more time, I think that Stefanski will probably draw on more of his pass game experience, like with Norv Turner and some of the stuff that maybe he never got a chance to get to last year. I think he expands on the pass game, right? Like the short pass game. Like he was the short game pass game coordinator in Minnesota for a couple years. Like he knows, he has ways to. He knows his pass game stuff too. I mean, and I see that, and I see him even going to AVP Van Pelt and seeing him draw on some of his experience in different pass games. Like let's diversify what we can do pass game wise. What can we do with four wides? What can we do with, like we've got these weapons now. If teams want to go one way, let's beat them the other way, which is what they were so good at the end of the year. And I can just see like teams looking at the Browns tape and Stefanski being the detailed-oriented guy that he is and the forward-thinking guy that he is, that he's going to want to be at the forefront of all that stuff and ahead of the game there. So I think they go a lot deeper into that stuff this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I know we talked about Ronnie Harrison and how Joe Woods said, we didn't get him into late in training camp and we can only teach him this. Well, that was true for a lot of the team last year. I mean,
yes.
Stefanski, he was there for training camp, but everything else was Zoom meetings. And there was even several weeks during the season that they had to go to Zoom meetings because the facility kept getting shut down. So I don't think we have seen even, a fraction of everything that Stefanski wants to implement as a play caller and as a head coach. I think, and that the crazy thing is he's already won the Coach of the Year award.
I know, right?
It was such a weird season. So I think that it's only going to get better. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there that he's going to be able to start putting in more of his wrinkles and stuff like that. Because, not only did you have all that, but then you had all the injuries. You had, players going down, Odell going down. You lost JoJo Natson, who you could see earlier in the year they were trying to get him on the field and try to, do some stuff with him. So I think this year could be huge for him as a head coach and a play caller, just putting more out there for the team.
One last thing on this topic. We started to see them do some interesting pre-snap stuff at the end of the year where they would quick snap and do some things like that to keep defenses off balance. And something that I've kind of discovered is that the Rams were really diving into this. They're always at the forefront of all this stuff, right? But McVay was really doing some stuff where coming out of the huddle late, coming right up to the ball and snapping it, keep defenses off balance, not be able to adjust to formations and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Stefanski elaborate on that even more, especially with the offensive line continuity and everything that they have there. I just think he's going to take advantage and get an edge everywhere he can. And I think some of that, I think the NFL offense is maybe going to some of that tempo pre-snap as a way to get an advantage against the defense. And I think the Browns will be a part of that.
Yeah, and especially not just the continuity in the offensive line, but the comfort level that Baker and Stefanski have with each other. The more that they're on the same page and the more trust there is between the two of them, I could definitely see a lot more of that.
Yeah, LA was doing some really interesting stuff with that at the end of the year, catching people off guard, just doing different things pre-snap that really had teams on the defensive. And I just can't imagine that Stefanski is so aware of everything, as I said again, I'm going to say it again, at the forefront of the offensive game in the NFL. We saw them even do a little bit of that last year, that quick snap stuff. I think we'll see more of that this year with the tempo and everything. All right, you wrote an awesome piece. This is our future considerations portion of the show. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland with special guest Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. I won't keep you much longer. I know we're over an hour now. but time flies when you're having fun.
It flies,
Yeah. So, but you wrote a piece, 6 guys that could be on the roster in 2022, and I love this article, and I really like a couple of the guys on this. One guy in specific, who I am a big fan of, and let me bring this up here. I just have pictures for us here, and you can kind of talk about this, but 6 guys who could end up on the Browns roster in 2022. So future considerations, and you start off with a kicker. I love kicker drama. Daniel Carlson, Las Vegas Raiders, free agent in 2022. Why'd you put him on the list?
Right now, the weakest spot on the Browns roster, and it feels really good to say this, but the weakest spot on the roster is the kicker. You've seen it before where teams just kind of get held back by that. They need the kick, they miss the kick. Don't pile on poor Cody Parkey, but you got the double doink. So I think Cody Parkey is a good kicker. I think he's a fine kicker, but Daniel Carlson knocked in like over 90% of his kicks last year. The guy was on fire. So he's somebody that if they don't feel confident in Cody Parkey or Chase McLaughlin, who's also there, then this is a free agent to look at, somebody that could improve their one. I don't even want to say it's really a weak spot because Parkey did fine last year, but it could definitely improve one of their positions.
Agreed. It's certainly something to look at as we go forward. Your number 5 guy, very interesting here, and you made some great connections in this. Tyler Conklin, tight end, Minnesota Vikings, will be a free agent in 2022. Tell me about him and why you make that connection.
It goes back to what we talked about earlier with David Njoku. If they do decide to keep Njoku, that'd be great. But if they don't, then all of a sudden you've got a hole at wide receiver 3, or tight end number 3. Conklin was on the team Stefanski was on the team when Conklin was drafted. They work together. They know him. He was a tight end 3 behind Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. So he's somebody that, knows the system. And if they needed to go and get somebody with some experience to play behind Hooper and Bryant, that could be a guy to look for.
I agree. Good call there. And just looking at him, he looks like an athletic guy that would fit the role, right?
Yeah.
I like this one too. Derek Barnett, edge, Philadelphia Eagles, free agent 2022. A connection here as well, right?
Yeah, he spent Andrew Berry spent one season after leaving the Browns, and after 2018, he spent 2019 with the Eagles. With Derek Barnett was there, drafted the same year as Myles Garrett, and a lot of people were comparing the two, saying Barnett might have been, on the same level as Garrett. So far, he hasn't proven to be, but the guy was a beast at Tennessee. He tore up the SEC. He's not bad. He's just never hit his peak. I believe 6.5 sacks was his high as a player. But he's somebody that if they don't decide to keep Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley beyond this year, both are on 1-year deals, this could be another guy to bring in and try to see if he can come in and be the player opposite Myles Garrett.
Absolutely. Like that as well. Here's an interesting one, and this would be a trade, right? Trade target 2022, Xavier Howard, cornerback, Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, there's been talk, and I'm sure you've heard it about Stephon Gilmore. People keep,
of course,
connecting the dots between Cleveland and Stephon Gilmore. I don't think there's any need to make a trade for a cornerback this year. I think you have enough guys. The question is going to be, are these the guys for the future? Can they stay healthy? Can they be, here long term? Obviously, Greg Newsome entering his first season, you're not even considering moving on from him. But if something happens where Greedy Williams can't play, if Denzel Ward can't stay healthy and they decide, hey, maybe we don't want to lock him up. Xavier Howard's a guy that his name started to be floated around this season. If that continues into next season and Cleveland is still isn't 100% sold on their guys, this could be a player to look for.
Big contract there, though, right?
He does have a big contract. But part of the problem is his contract is not as big as his teammates. So when they gave Byron Jones a big contract, that's when you started hearing some of the rumblings out there. But the guy had 10 interceptions last year. He's
hell
big
of a player.
Yeah.
He is a hell of a player. He would be a hell of an ad, for sure.
You talk about a defense that might have some holes in it. The quickest way to fix that is to get a guy that can just get the ball for you. No matter how many yards you're giving up, if you're just going to take the ball right back away.
Yeah, Absolutely. And they'll continue to build on their core. So I like that too. Here's the one I really, really like. I am a Michael Gallup truther. I think he is overlooked absolutely gigantically in Dallas. I think he's been overlooked for some time. I think he has a ton of talent. I think he has a wide receiver one potentially, in the right system. I love that you put him on this list here as we look at a wide receiver room that's probably going to shake up after this year. He's a guy that's going to be a free agent next offseason.
Yeah, and the only way he stays in Dallas is if they cut Amari Cooper. And as good as Amari Cooper's been, I don't see that happening.
No.
As much grief as some people want to give Cooper because he just looks like he doesn't care. I think that's, he still is picking up 1,100 yards or so a season. And, he's a wide receiver one. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a wide receiver number one. And like you said, Gallup's kind of the odd man out, which is crazy because this is one of the most talented receivers there is in the NFL.
He is.
I know last year he had a few drops that he shouldn't have, but he also made some circus catches, in coverage over people's heads. He's a deep threat. I believe he's close to 16 yards a catch for his career. This is a guy who was a third-round pick, but has just really developed into a trusted weapon there. And I'm also a Michael Gallup truther. I'm 100% on board with trying to target him in the offseason.
Yeah, I just think, I watch their games, and sometimes, they had CeeDee Lamb, they had Amari Cooper, and sometimes the only guy getting open is Gallup, right? And the only guy making it, and he just has been so impressive to me. I think he would be an absolute steal.
He really did. He actually beat the Rams in week 1, if you remember. Yeah. With that catch, they called a pass interference, which was really kind of bogus, but that was a clutch play he made. So he'll step up in the big times too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one there. I think he would be a great add to this wide receiver room. Post 21, which we don't know really what that's going to entail, right? Fred Warner, linebacker, free agent in 2022. Boy, this is a guy that would fit right in that Seattle cover 3. If you're talking about playing that, he's a guy that's done it and played in it.
Yeah, and this is one that might be more of a pipe dream on my part because it doesn't look like so far like Andrew Berry's going to be willing to pay a ton of money on a linebacker. But that may be because he just hasn't found the right linebacker. And we've seen in the last 2 years that if there is a position of need, he'll go and attack it in the offseason. In both the draft, free agency, whatever. He did that with Conklin and Wells, giving Conklin a big contract, drafting Wells early. And then this season, going out and, paying Anthony Walker, drafting JOK, and then paying, John Johnson, and then drafting McCown. Like, he'll go out there and he will attack the positions if he needs to. So I think if linebacker still ends up being something that really holds them back this year, he might look at somebody like this who, Fred Warner worked with Joe Woods in San Francisco. So
there's that other connection too. Yeah. Joe Woods played in that scheme, knows his style, and one hell of a player. And I think a lot of that depends on Walker, right? Walker on a 1-year deal. What does he do this year? Does he do enough that the Browns want to bring him back and make him the long-term solution there? I know so far it seems like he is like the ideal guy off the field and on. So we'll see what happens with that. But 1-year deal, they could be looking for a middle linebacker again next year.
Yeah, and Warner, as long as he doesn't get franchise tagged or get a big extension, he's going to be the number one guy at that position for sure.
So interesting stuff there. Great article. Go check it out. Always read Randy Gurzi at Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. You've been fantastic, sir. Thank you so much for your time. You sported the All Eyes on Cleveland t-shirt. Absolutely huge, and you killed it tonight. So thank you so much, Randy. I hope you had a good time.
I did, man. Thank you for having me, Brad.
Always. I'll catch up with you here in a few minutes. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Awesome. Thank you. You have a good one.
All right, you too.
on Cleveland. We here. Yeah.
Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone, our guest tonight on All Eyes on Cleveland. He did an outstanding job, killed it as usual. He's always got some really interesting articles. I love that 2022, guys that could be on the roster then. Also took a look at Mack Wilson as a potential cut candidate, and some other cut candidates as well. If you missed that part of the show, make sure you go back and check it out. We covered just about everything that we could here tonight, even Jarvis Landry's potential weight loss or his intended weight loss. Just a couple things. Go check out the new website, www.alleyesoncleveland.com. It's fantastic. Leave a voicemail. We'll play it on the air. Troy left a voicemail. I will play it on the next show, Troy. Next week, next Thursday will be our show, and we will play the voicemail on the air as he had a question for the show. We have our sponsors, Fanatics and Vivid Seats, on the website as well. At Fanatics right now, just want to let you know, throw this up real quick, $10 t-shirts at Fanatics right now. $10.79, reduced rate. Check out these t-shirts for $10. Go to Fanatics. Go to the website. The description in the link below will have the link as well to go get these. $10.79 for 2 Browns t-shirts, as well as a $5 women's Odell Beckham Jr. t-shirt. And, of course, I've been talking about it online and on Twitter. The 2021 training camp hats are out, and they're pretty sick. I like the white one. I think that one's going to be the one for me. I don't think I can pull off the bucket hat, but they're pretty slick. Those are the 2021 Browns training camp hats at Fanatics. Go to the link in the description below or alleyesoncleveland.com and just click on the Vivid Seats / Fanatics at the top of the page, and it'll take you right to it. Vivid Seats offering Browns single game tickets and multi-game packages as well. Thank you so much for watching All Eyes on Cleveland tonight. Stick with us next week. We're going to have a fantastic guest. It's already scheduled, and I think you're going to be really excited about another really, really good show. Hit the like button and the subscribe button on your way out, the notification bell, so you know every time that we come on the air live. We appreciate it. We're growing rapidly, and I can't thank you enough for watching, listening, and participating in All Eyes on Cleveland. For Mikey on the 1 to 2s, big thanks to Randy Gurzi and Dog Pound Daily, as they are always shouting me out and very loyal to me, and I appreciate that. Mikey, great job on the 1s and 2s. And with that, go enjoy Game 2 of the NBA Finals. I don't know who you're rooting for. I got to go finish my DraftKings lineups. But, so hope you enjoyed the show. And with that, we are out.